Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Yeah, John Berman, I would say this is probably the worst 10-day period for the president in the polls his entire second term. The numbers are just atrocious. What are we talking about here in terms of net approval rating? Well, take a look. These are all November polls. The best one of the group puts him at 14 points underwater. That's the Marquette University Law School poll, tied for the worst he's ever had in that poll. Fox, 17 points underwater. Marist, 17 points underwater. The Reuters Ipsos poll, 22 points underwater. And then taking the cake, the AP North poll, 26 points underwater. When your best poll has you still 14 points underwater, you know it's truly bad, and it's as bad as 26 points underwater. We're talking about an average well underwater with the deep blue sea, swimming with the fishes.
And now this is all parties here. If you think this is bad, Harry.
If you think this is bad, what is driving these horrific numbers for Donald Trump? Well, why don't we take a look at independents, Trump's net approval rating with independents. Back in January, he was close to even. He was at -4 points. Not great, but not terrible. Look at this number, 43 points underwater with independents in the most recent average of these polls. When you have 43 points underwater with independents, you know you're doing terribly. You can't win with this. If this holds for next year's midterm election, wave adios amigos, goodbye, see you later to that House Republican majority and that Senate Republican majority, very much in danger as well. When you take a look at the Pew Research validated voter survey going back to last year, he was basically even among independents with Kamala Harris. Now he is 43 points underwater. Whatever he is doing with independents, it ain't working. They despise him at this point.
That is just a colossal drop.
Oh, my God. It's a 40-point move.
Okay, that's among certain political groups here. How about what issues may be driving this?
Okay, yeah. So we say that independents are driving Trump's decline overall. But what is pushing independents and the rest of the electorate away from Donald Trump? Away from Donald Trump. John Berman, move out of this screen. Away from Donald Trump. Well, it has everything to do with inflation. It's the cost of living, baby. That is the name of the game. You go back to January, he was 3 points above water. This was the reason why that voters gave him a second term. You look at this. Look at this. Now, 34 points underwater. My goodness gracious, that is a 37-point move in the wrong direction.
All right.
Welcome back to Training Tuesday, folks. The Rob Maness Show's live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. Well, the Trump coalition, by the numbers, and this is number season, I suppose, because it seems polling is leading the headlines every day right now. But what do they really mean in this age of fifth-generation warfare that we've been talking about? Is Trump really underwater with his base coalition? That CNN guy, man, when you could tell when he really likes something he's presenting, he gets really excited, even more than usual. Is the affordability problem as big as the media is saying it is? Is there really a MAGA civil war, as indicated by Margorie Taylor Green's recent resignation announcement and disownment by Donald Trump? Who are these people called Groypers, led by a guy named Nick Fuentes? And is that group as big of an influence as some media outlets are trying to say they are? The answers, they're in reliable data. And that, my friends, as you know, is very hard to come by. But when the President of the United States asks you to come to chat about your data, maybe you're on to something. And that's why my guest today is Mark Mitchell from Rasmussen Reports. He was invited to the White House last week and is here to talk with us about the reality of the numbers we're hearing about. And I've seen members of our own team, I mean the MAGA team, attack Mark in recent days because of the data he's reporting. But his data is reliable. It's so reliable, his X handle is @HonestPollster, and you ought to follow him. I don't care if you like what he's talking about or not. He's telling the truth as his data shows it. Mark's not only Rasmussen's head pollster, he's a fellow veteran and graduate of the United States Naval Academy. Mark, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, sir. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, great to be back. And you know what? I earned my nomination, Rob. It wasn't given to me by my parents. So, yep. I had to go interview Bill Bradley. Yeah. It wasn't
right?
Wasn't. Yeah, good times. You know,
Yeah.
I had my J. Rotzi uniform with all the medals and, everything hanging off the uniform. It's a pretty good look, but Mikey Sherrill, the Democrat governor-elect of New Jersey, different situation there.
Yeah, is it her kids that she got in, or was it her? It was her kids, right?
Yeah, my understanding is you get 5 nominations over a 4-year period, and 2 of those were to her own children, and they thought that them having her husband's last name would be enough to. It's just pretty gross.
That's sad. That's pretty sad, man. All right. I got to ask you the big question, though. All right. Why did you get invited to the White House? What's the story behind that? What you can talk about? I'm sure you're on some kind of restriction.
No, I wasn't. That's the wild thing. So
Cool.
I don't know. I guess they didn't tell me anything like that.
Okay.
Basically, for people who don't know, I'm an independent pollster. And so neither party pays me to help them to win is what it ultimately boils down to. And so I'm the closest that you have to a lobbyist, basically, because the American people don't have a lobby. It's not like the pharmaceutical industry or the military industrial complex or Israel or anything like that. Basically comes down to nobody really cares about the voter in Washington, D.C. And every trip I take there reinforces that, in my opinion. And so it's good news when a Trump administration takes somebody like me down there to tell them stuff, because that means they're, in my opinion, listening to the voter and they're trying to do the right things. And, I'm in the weird situation where they can't really fire me because I don't work for them, and they can't pull business because they haven't paid me a cent. And so all the work that I've done trying to deliver honest polling to the American people, and there is a lot of dishonest polling out there, especially on the Republican side, has all been basically a charity. So, I've been following Trump a long time, and I've been very vocal. We've been outspoken, and Washington, D.C. hates us because they can't control the outcome of our polling. And so we make more money bloviating about politics now than we actually do polling for people. And there's very clearly been some problems with the Trump administration where he's come out and basically counter-signaled his base. And then just Epstein is one of the very, very most prominent things. That's a huge deal because it was, in my opinion, a canary in the coal mine about accountability. And Donald Trump ran on draining the swamp. And quite frankly, we've seen nothing. We've seen literally nothing. And they can talk all they want to about having to cross the T's and dot the I's. But at the end of the day, I think the leftist, activist, judicial system is just going to throw these cases out anyways. So at least get them out there. You know what I mean? But so there's a lot specifically about the economic stuff that we could go into. But the message, in my opinion, was that despite what Harry Enton says, Donald Trump's actually not doing that bad. Those are made up garbage numbers.
Exactly.
But he's never going to be on the ballot again. And so when you look at what happened, all of October and November was completely misplayed by the Republican Party. In fact, most of this year has been a complete wash, a complete sellout, a complete capitulation on a mandate that they were given to fix the economic system and basically reform the government. And you could say, well,
so I'm glad you pointed out that it's a good sign that the White House invited you, the folks up there invited you to come talk to them. That's very important for people to understand because there's a lot of wavering in the MAGA coalition right now. Look, I'm concerned, as you are. I'm tracking on what you're saying. I'm concerned about 2026 and beyond, for sure. I would even say very concerned. So what were the main messages that you gave to the White House from a database perspective?
So his approval is -5 today, not -23, whatever the heck he's saying.
Right. Yeah.
And he's definitely not 43 points underwater with independents. It's more like, 12 to 15. But again, October was a mess up. And in my opinion, the Republicans underperformed, part of because the optics were so bad. I mean, people gave Trump a lot of leeway with the shutdown His numbers got down to about -10, but he got to -27 with independents, which is really bad.
Yeah.
But it was like, okay, well, the Epstein situation hasn't gone away. Donald Trump's flying around the world meeting with rich and powerful people. The Republicans are doing nothing about the shutdown. We didn't get these firings, and now it looks like we're going to have SNAP pulled right before the election. Like, who thought that was a good idea? And the Republicans and Democrats are fighting over whose blame it is, which I don't care. Like, the American people don't care. It just looks like normal, typical Washington, D.C. stuff. And people voted for Trump and the Republicans because they thought they were going to get change in Washington, D.C. The last election was a referendum on trust in the federal government. It wasn't a referendum on Kamala Harris. She got 49% of the vote. Only 30% trust the federal government. Only 25% trust big businesses. And so I think what happened is at the end of October going into November, a lot of people are just like, that's it. He cares more about what's going on in the Middle East than me. He cares more about foreign dignitaries than me. They're going to take SNAP away. They don't even have a plan. And what happened is in these blue areas, in my polling, it shows that a lot more of Trump's support comes from Democrats and independents than in most of the exit polling. And so I think that's, Chitterelli ran a pretty good race as a Republican in New Jersey. Problem is that New Jersey's not a Republican state. It's just not. And so there's, talking to Republicans, there's no sensitivity to the fact that you built a big tent coalition and they need something. This isn't 2016 where Trump can just throw the spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. This is a coalition of the desperate. This is the culmination of 4 or 5 decades of the American middle class being hollowed out, with the very big cherry on top of Joe Biden's basically plundering of the Treasury and weaponization of the federal government. And so when you look at what after the mandate, if you look at what like Mike Johnson says, he doesn't even really get it. You know what I mean? He talks about lowering prices. He talks about getting the woke stuff out of the schools and blah, 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 blah. No, this is like the government has been co-opted by corporations and the deep state, and the entire economic system has squeezed every last drop out of the American people. And I know you might not run on that, but if you don't fix that, the Democrats are going to win with their message of democratic socialism. And so what I said to him was, again, your numbers aren't that bad, but Republicans are on track to lose. And it would take a Manhattan Project to get them to win. And I laid out what that would look like. And people know this because, like, even Charlie Kirk back in August was passing around a plan for like economic populism that helps the youth. Right. So the problem is that this isn't about conservative values anymore. People do not care, especially under 50. All they want is their problems fixed. And so that's a huge opportunity for the Republican Party, because even the Trump voters, like under 40, are really socialists. They are not conservatives. This idea of conservatism being the best ideological, like maybe, but it's failed people as a luxury belief almost as bad as all the woke stuff has. Like, can you imagine just a party running on, no, like the system's okay, we just need to be more free market capitalism and it'll ultimately at some point fix themselves? No, Amazon's going to literally own everything is what would happen. So so the system doesn't work. And I said, well, like you got to stop taking credit for wins that don't matter. So what he's saying is like, well, look, inflation was high under Biden and now it's low. And it's like, yeah, but the prices are still high and people know this. Yeah. The polling shows, like, even on like gas prices, he lowered gas prices, objectively has lowered gas prices. Yes. But he's not even getting credit in the polls. Only 29% of people think that gas prices are lower because they're still hemorrhaging money because their jobs were given overseas. There's no middle class. The housing prices are too high. Health insurance is too high. And so he needs to engage the Republican Party in that solution, because right now the Republican Party is doing absolutely nothing. And you have to acknowledge that the problem exists. It's not inflation and prices. It's something bigger and more pervasive. It's a system that doesn't work for Americans. Embrace that huge problem and then lay out a plan to fix it that will take years. That's how you get people to vote for you. Here's the plan. Exactly. We've delivered on some of it. And so it was really a two-pronged plan of economic populism that serves the needs of the younger generation that's been priced out of the American dream. And I laid out, and a lot of the things he's done are good for that. The H-1B fee is perfect for that. It's starting to work. Yeah. But it's like he doesn't even know that.
I know.
Still.
We're going to talk about that after this break. We're going to see a clip about the H-1B thing, Mark. But you're exactly right, man. I learned that conservatism, when I first started running for office, people would call me conservative. But the more I studied on the political zeitgeist that was going on then, the more I realized that it's conservatism is not something that's going to work for the average American because they see that it doesn't work. And it's always a losing proposition, it seems like. We'll be right back with Mark Mitchell of Rasmussen Reports, the honest pollster. If you can't take the honesty, what's wrong with you? It's not what's wrong with him or me. It's what's wrong with you. We'll be right back.
Do you appreciate all the free programming we produce here at Worldview Tube? Well, if you do, we need your partnership now. If you're already supporting us, thank you. If you're not, would you please consider doing so? We have to have a big November and December end of the year giving. Please go here right now to this website, worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. You can give through credit card. You can give through PayPal. You'll find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. You'll also find our phone number. Simply use that phone number by leaving a voicemail for Melissa or texting her, and my wife will get back with you and help you make your contribution over the phone. We send out tax receipts with our EIN number, well, the first week of February of each year. We, again, have to have a very big November and December as we get ready for pushing out more Christian Worldview programming for 2026. So thank you for going now to worldviewfoundation.com. That's worldviewfoundation.com.
Thank you, Mr. President. One of the most abused visa systems in our current immigration system has been the H-1B non-immigrant visa program. This is supposed to allow highly skilled laborers who work in fields that Americans don't work in to come into the United States of America. What this proclamation will do is raise the fee that companies pay to sponsor H-1B applicants to $100,000. This will ensure that the people they're bringing in are actually very highly skilled and that they're not replaceable by American workers. So it'll protect American workers, but ensure that companies have a pathway to hire truly extraordinary people and bring them to the United States to work.
We need workers. We need workers. We need great workers. And this pretty much ensures that that's what's going to happen. I think, Sean, do you agree with that?
Well, they're $100,000 per year. So the whole idea is no more will these big tech companies or other big companies train foreign workers. They have to pay the government $100,000, then they have to pay the employee. So it's just not economic. If you're going to train somebody, you're going to train one of the recent graduates from one of the great universities across our land. Train Americans, stop bringing in people to take our jobs. That's the policy here, $100,000 a year for H-1B visas, and all of the big companies are on board. We've spoken to them about the gold card.
They love it. They love it. They really love it. They need it.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Turkey Tuesday, the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. The turkeys were pardoned. I think he called them Chuck and Nancy today. And my guest is Mark Mitchell of Rasmussen Reports. Mark, we were just starting to talk about H-1Bs before the break there. But my question is, as is the audience's, though, about what you were talking about with the White House folks, is what was their response to you?
Well, I think people need to think really hard about the word generational politics, because that's what I'm starting to see here. And that the young people have a lot of grievances that the sort of older folks, and especially the Republican Party in Washington, D.C., is just completely blind to. They have no idea. And so the idea that, wait, you're telling me I can't win on conservatism is a new thing. And again, I'm a conservative leaning guy. I like the ideals, but let's not kid ourselves. We don't have a free market, a capitalist system right now. We just don't. We have a corporatist oligarchy full of corporate welfare that is it's got its boot on the neck of the American people. And so what was really weird in that clip that you just saw is kind of like a little bit what I saw, which is okay, it's a really great policy. And Donald Trump, like, doesn't really seem like he gets why that he's signing it. You know, he said, well, we need more workers. We don't need more workers. We need less workers. The problem is, and they can look at that fake unemployment rate and say, no, our employment market's hot. No, it's not. You got people who are getting good degrees and not being able to find jobs because they're shut out of the workforce because the corporations are offshoring and bringing in H-1Bs. Lutnick knows it. You can tell he gets it. He knows why this thing's being signed. And so if you said to people, well, hey, listen, we acknowledge that the American dream has been stolen. We're going to restore it to you, and there might be some bumps in the road, but we're going to do it by making sure these corporations hire and train you first, and we're going to go after the corporations, and this is just step one. Step two is to tax offshoring. Step three is to go after these corporations for diversity hiring people. Step four, you know, like lay out the plan. And there should be a lot about how that will affect the housing market, because every high-paying salary, and what's wild is you have people like Elon Musk saying, oh, we're not birthing at replacement rate and people need to have more kids. But he's one of the biggest H-1B supporters in the entire country. And, you know, so he wants to give those good salaries to basically the rest of the world. How do you have more kids? Get Americans a salary. Then they will buy a house, then they will have kids, then they will be conservatives, and then they won't want to burn the government down. And so that was like prong one of my approach to Trump. And you can tell, like, part of the problem, in my opinion, is that when I got 45 minutes with him, with JD and Susie Wiles, and then I spent more time with Susie and JD as well.
Yeah.
Like JD knows all this stuff, like he gets it, but Trump spends a lot of time talking to people he likes, which tend to be people like him. Old, rich people. And, you know, Fox News talking heads, I think he talks to Sean Hannity a lot. He talks a lot about Lindsey Graham. He just loves golfing with that guy. And so he's surrounded by people who it would be a bad thing if the housing market collapsed. And I could tell when I was talking about these things and about the needs of the younger voters, he said, well, you know, there's a lot of people that really want to protect those home values. And it's like, yes, but when you lose next fall, it's going to be because you lost the youth vote, and a lower housing market would be objectively better for the youth. And so I think you're going to see this play out increasingly, where the split isn't so much more like this ideological right versus left, but it's like the system that's worked for a group of people that hasn't worked for another group of people, and this other group of people is growing and getting stronger politically. And we I don't know if you want to go there or not, but like one of the very most clear, obvious ways is just by looking at what's happening with Israel right now, which is the young people are just completely rebelling against Israel in a way that was very measurable in the polling.
Yeah, let me. I'm going to do it. We're going to do a whole segment on Groypers and Civil War and Israel and all that stuff, But I'm glad you brought that up, because last week I was honored to get to go talk to a Turning Point USA chapter, first speaker they've ever had over at Southeastern Louisiana University. It was a small group, about 25 people maybe. Most of them were young guys, a few women in there. And the interesting thing about this issue came up when one of the two graduate students, a smart guy, piped up and said, jobs, sir. Because I asked everybody, I said, what do you want to talk about? He goes, jobs. Sir, let's talk about jobs. And I asked him, I said, well, what do you guys think about the H-1B visa program? And immediately every man in the room said, end it. Stop it right now. It's taking jobs that we are in college to go do. You know, and these guys ran the spectrum. There were a couple of soft sciences like political science and that kind of thing, but you have had tech guys in there, both men and women, STEM folks, those kind of things, that they want those jobs, and they're seeing that 25% of their graduating class will not be able to get jobs in those areas that they're paying to go to college to do, and they're not dumb people.
Yeah. Well, you're a former military officer, and you understand something called root cause and corrective action. And unfortunately, our leaders in Washington, D.C. do not. And, you know, Trump, I think, is surrounded by a ton of people who benefit from the H-1B program. But what's wild, again, is that he's doing all the right things. He's just taking credit for it in the wrong way and not understanding that they've stumbled into a real winner here. And so what I get from DC is kind of this feeling that I can reinforce in the polling that actually the H-1B program is really popular. People like the idea of taking talented immigrants from around the world and bringing them to America. And that's like everybody in Washington, D.C. would stop right there because it makes them feel good because, well, look at that. Government has a policy win and corporations love it. And now we have something that the American people like. But at the same time, they say that only 27% of people say that today's children will have it better off than their parents. So that's horrifying and that's a problem. And so what's the root cause and corrective action? No jobs. What do we have? An affordability crisis. What's the root cause? No good paying jobs. So now you have Trump saying, oh, look, we got inflation down. Oh, prices of gasoline's down $1. That's not going to make up for a $150,000 base salary that you just gave to some guy from India that doesn't need to be here. So again, they need to single thread on that. And especially among the base, because Donald Trump's movement was started by angry young men, most of them predominantly white. And if they're not happy, like they were the core of Trump's support. If they're not happy, there's a problem. And when they get louder, what they're doing is being a feedback loop. And so when that feedback loop gets louder and more influential, you have to take a look at how your movement is failing. That's how you keep big tents together. And, you know, right now, you said it, like everything's fraying right now. And I think it's just a leadership problem. It really is messaging and leadership problem and planning. You know, when I had to get my Eagle Scout at age 18, like I kind of had to lay out a plan about how I was going to do it. You know, it's complicated to fix America. You probably need a plan. And I think America would like to see it, would like to go to a website and follow along. It would be a really great way to engage people in the Republicans. Like, how are you going to fix this? Because that's unfortunately the situation for Republicans, and I really hate to say this, but because of the massive asymmetrical difference between gaslighting and the unified machine and the way the Democrat mind works, for Democrats really to win in America, all they have to be is not insane. Because I think there's just this fundamental default of people that says, all right, the government will solve this. You know, it'll take the problems off of my hands. The nanny state will care for me. On the right, they just have to do something. They literally just have to do something. Like, Congress, please just do something. Just show us the plan and deliver.
You know what? The really interesting thing in my conversation with the Turning Point USA folks over the students in that chapter, and one of the guys who actually wasn't a student, he was a welder that came in and joined the chapter and came to the meeting. But they linked the H-1B issue, the housing being priced out of the housing market, jobs, all to Israel and Ukraine, not just Israel, but Israel and Ukraine, and foreign aid and all the money and resources and time that we're spending on that. And these folks just feel like they're left out of the prosperity and the freedom that they should be getting that their parents and grandparents got. That's the sense that I got. And they actually linked all those things together with the H-1B conversation.
Yeah, I think increasingly you'll find the young people are immune to gaslighting. And these people had everything thrown at them. These are the people that kind of like grew up during COVID, you know what I mean? And they saw like friends getting myocarditis and blah, blah, blah. And they look at the boomers watching MSNBC, I think with scorn. And obviously these people are gaslit as well. I think there's an online monoculture that brings in sort of these leftist people and replaces their religion, Christianity, with a religion of cult leftism.
Yeah.
But I think these people, everybody says they're more conservative. They are not. They are not more conservative. They're more desperate for order. And if you look at it that way, there's a huge opportunity for the right. But it can't win by doing things the traditional way. And these people will not suffer like deviation from the plan. And so if you look at Israel, again, it's a relatively small amount of money, you know, tactically speaking. It's like a couple $billion a year. It's not really going to move the needle. But the problem is, it's like, okay, well, they voted for Trump for massive change, and now all of a sudden Trump is helping Israel bomb Iran. It's not that they hate Israel. It's they're like, well, what's happening here? And they're right to be suspicious of a government of any influence because there are many influences. That's like how I started the conversation. Nobody's looking out for the voter. And so when they see all of this focus on Israel that is questionable. It is questionable to look at things like Ted Cruz, the Republican Jewish Coalition, and say that's kind of weird. They're going to rebel against it. And so when you look at the polling, Israel, we have a tracking question: do you support Israel or Palestine, or not sure? And Israel went from plus 42 2 years ago, now to last week only plus 6, and only 16% of people under 30 say Israel, only 16%, and the number's dropping everywhere. But it's gotten to the point where the young people are plus 20 Palestine, and I don't know how do you win those voters if your goal for the Republican Party is to be hand in glove with Israel. It's not going to work. And so there's only room for single-threaded focus on one group of people. Like, my hypothesis is that should be the voter, especially the young voter, who is this political football. Yeah, exactly. Right. Fight. Yeah. And that was one of the other things I told Trump, is that, like you said, you had this moment in Butler where you said fight, fight, fight. It was really powerful imagery. But you never really specified what that was. I think a lot of people projected. I think a lot of people are thinking that he's going to fight, fight, fight for Israel, or fight, fight, fight for corporate tax cuts, or fight, fight, fight. How about fight, fight, fight for Americans, and make that the plan? And so prong one was the economic populism. The other thing we didn't really talk about was there needs to be visible government reform, because in the polling, there's this issue of zero institutional trust hanging over everybody's heads. And there hasn't been the visual swamp draining process that has to roll through every single federal agency. And Doge was giving people that, and people love Doge.
Let's talk about that right after this break. Let's dive into that right after this break, because that fits perfectly into my plot of discussion with Mark Mitchell here at Rasmussen Reports. Is government corruption. They released some numbers that are very interesting, and we'll talk with him about that right after this break on the Rob Maness Show. It's Turkey Tuesday. Happy Thanksgiving, America.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage, and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
Sky-high home prices. The median price for a house is now more than $422,000. That's up 39% from 5 years ago. Home sale rates are down 15%, and 30-year mortgage rates are now at 6.5%. The Department of Housing and Urban Development is promoting home ownership this week with their innovative housing showcase on the National Mall. And HUD Secretary Scott Turner joins us now. Good morning to you, Mr. Secretary.
Well, good morning, Ainsley. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on. If he does declare a national emergency on housing, how will this help the home buyer?
Well, Ainsley, right now we are having these discussions. We have a housing affordability issue in our country right now, and all the decision makers, myself and others, are at the table with the president talking about, but I don't want to get ahead of him. But one thing I will say, you alluded to our innovative housing showcase that we're having here at the National Mall that HUD is hosting, bringing together private sector entities and individuals to showcase, the American dream is having an American home. And so we have modular houses, we have manufactured housing. So I invite people to come out and see the real solutions that American people and American companies are bringing together to show what we can do in our country as it pertains to home affordability and housing.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, and my guest today is Mark Mitchell of Rasmussen Reports. And Mark, we were just starting to talk about corruption, government corruption on the back other side of the break there. And you guys released some numbers. I think it was either this morning or I saw them late last night about corruption. And one of the things that caught my interest was that the polling population in your numbers showed that they trust Democrats more to address government corruption than Republicans. It wasn't by much, if I remember right, but it was more, right? Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what you'd expect. We have a red team, blue team paradigm. And Donald Trump ran on draining the swamp. Draining the swamp was popular. It was like 68% wanted to drain the swamp. And then during the Doge situation, we had 72% of people angry at the level of waste, fraud, and abuse. And overwhelmingly, 7 out of 10 people wanted Doge-style audits and all of the major, things. And Doge was sidelined. They had a 60% Trump approval rating of voters under 40. And I don't know why, when that happened, everybody in Washington, D.C. didn't drop everything and say, like, wait a second, everything has changed. The Republican Party should have, like, had, sessions to figure out, to, like, root cause that. Why are all of a sudden we the cultural zeitgeist of the youth? And it was because the Doge was picking apart the federal government. And what Doge was doing is reinforcing and validating in everybody's minds that, yes, there is an enemy. It is as bad as I thought it was. And then Doge just went away. And now, you have these things where it's like, okay, well, we had assassination. And people are questioning the official FBI story. Well, why is that? Well, it's because the FBI was turned into Joe Biden's personal Gestapo. I told this to Trump. 53% said that it was Joe Biden's personal Gestapo. And you just put somebody else in charge of the Gestapo. So unless there's a visible process of reform, everybody's going to assume that the CIA still kills sitting presidents and that the IRS is going to target conservatives and that everybody at school board meetings is going to be spied on. So you have to do the investigations visibly and frog march people out of these institutions that did this stuff. And again, the window is closing, and I don't know why it wasn't done already. I can only assume that it's because there was no plan and that Donald Trump has surrounded himself, again, by the wrong people. But they need to deliver on that because we all know where this goes. Is the left is incentivized to try to do things when they get into power to prevent another Republican from winning, and they're gonna push the edge again. So you can blame it on them all you want, but they're at least telling everybody who they are. You know what I mean? And it's like you're going to get the anger for lying, like saying you're going to do something and then not delivering.
Yeah, I mean, everybody I know, I think you're spot on with what you said about the FBI. Look, the same thing's happening in the Department of War over there. The political appointees are slowly trickling in, but the same old Marxists that brought Marxist indoctrination to the force are still operating there, and they're actually being protected by senior executive service people. And some of them, like the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Military Personnel Policy, she is still in place, and it's a Biden person that they made the position from a political appointee to a career job too, which is incredibly dumb to allow that to happen. And I thought we had a plan over in OMB with Russ Vought to shift all of those positions that were in policy positions back to political appointees and remove the Biden appointees, but I just don't see that happening at a fast enough rate. I mean, you see it every once in a while, but I think that's across the board.
No, this isn't something that incrementalism can fix. And so I think this measurement of government corruption, again, it's like 80%. That's the highest number I've ever seen. And what that tells me is that people who focus on transparency, like, that's not good enough. All you're doing is you're just convincing everybody that they were right, that the government is worse than they thought. And so it doesn't matter unless you fix it. And unfortunately, like, we saw what it takes to fix an activist institution. It takes something like what Elon Musk did to Twitter. And I think especially the youth are very attuned to that. Now, what is kind of weird, again, we've talked about conservatism and how it's kind of failed and what do the youth want and how the youth are craving order. Well, that 60% youth approval rating that now voters under 35, it's less than 40%. So Trump went from 60 to under 40% with people under 30. Is that was a week after Donald Trump said that quote that he who saves his country violates no laws. And what's kind of interesting about the Zoomers too is that they're not necessarily following all these scandals as closely as everybody else. But when you tell them what they are, they're most likely to want arrests. And what's really wild is we've had all these signals, like I said, about how the under 40s who even voted Trump are more socialistic. But we even asked some crazy stuff like, hey, government struggles to fulfill the needs of the people and AI is getting more advanced. Would you support giving control of the government over to an advanced AI? And it's like 40% support to 50% oppose roughly. But it's the conservatives under 40 that support it, 55 to 40. So conservatives under 40 are literally ready to give the government to an AI. We even had a question about giving control of the military to an AI. That's literally like building Skynet. And that was supported by a plurality of conservatives under 40. Not liberals. Liberals didn't like this idea. It was Christians and conservatives. And so these people, in my opinion, like I'm projecting onto these numbers, see that there was an America stolen from them, and they're very, very, very angry about it. And they see, I think, deeper meaning to these
I didn't
issues
know
of
that
immigration.
one about the military deal, Mark. That's incredible.
I think it was 49% support to maybe 42% oppose of conservative ID, people who identify as conservative under 40. And Christians, way more Christians than atheists. The atheists, which is wild too, the atheists don't want to give control to an AI. The Christians do. So I think there's this aspect again of like, I don't care about values. I just want it fixed. Society's failed these people.
So I guess the underlying thought there from this crowd that wants that is that the AI can remove the human aspect of the corruptive nature of a government.
Yeah, I think that's probably it. 100%.
Yeah. Wow. I'm not too surprised about the military stuff though, because conservatives tend to be more pro-military and more trusting in that. But holy cow. Yeah. The Doge thing.
Well, the AI is probably not going to send them to war for NATO. That's the good news. You know what I mean? Like maybe the boomers will, but the AI is not going to send them to war for NATO.
I don't know. The president just signed this Genesis mission order last night. Have you had a chance to look at that? I can't wait to see the polling on that because that's basically building the government AI, that these voters are saying that they want, essentially, from what I could tell.
Yeah, like I don't read it too closely. I think it's probably a bad idea. And again, he talks a lot about the foreign investment and how it's going to build jobs. I think that's great. Like that's the kind of things you need to do. But this is also very long timeline stuff. And so when people say they hate corporations and they're ready to give up on free market capitalism, in my opinion, it supports a much more pugilistic approach to like our current strain of capitalism, which Trump is not doing. He's hugging Mark Zuckerberg and he's cozying up to people who are going to give him these deals. And I think there is probably some aspect that's difficult to measure of people under 40 who are looking at this and saying, well, down the road, this is going to replace me. And they'd be right because the corporations basically offshored for 20 years and then spent another 10 years giving jobs to H-1Bs. And now you have the AI layoffs that are coming, and Amazon's already leaning into that. So,
and you're not talking a few thousand per company either. You're talking like over 50,000 a tranche in some of these cuts, right? These layoffs.
Well, yeah, but like if you look at the entire strain of the whole, so we've probably offshored somewhere between. Not even talking about like the manufacturing that shifted to China. There's got to be between what, 5, 10, 15 million white collar jobs in like engineering and accounting that have just been shipped overseas. And then on top of that, I think we have something between 2.5 million temporary workers here who are taking like higher paying jobs. And so people can say, oh, the H-1B program is small. It's only like X number of people. And we need people to pick our crops and stuff like that. Well, there are like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who are pulling down 3, 4, 500,000 total comp in Silicon Valley coding for Google. And if for every one of those people you get rid of, that's like deporting 10 illegal aliens economically. And again, I love the idea of deporting illegal aliens. I think they're a strain on our system. I think Trump should probably do it. Like we're starting to see focus group feedback that they've been a little bit too heavy-handed with the optics. But continue the deportations. But like, I just don't understand why we're hugging it out with corporations that everybody hates. Over 80% of America says that they think the technology industry is run wild and rampant and unchecked. So it's like partnering with them to do something that has a very uncertain deliverable, right?
Yeah, especially after what we saw with the censorship regime, the Autofin guy and that crowd. I mean, the big tech people were all in on suppressing information and misinformation and propaganda campaigns and taking away rights and those kind of things. That's what a lot of people I talk to too. I mean, just anecdotally, when I'm out and about, they are really confused, Mark, about that, as they are about this thing with Margorie Taylor Green that we're going to talk about, and the Groypers and Tucker Carlson. I want to talk about that in the last segment here, right after this break, with Mark Mitchell of Rasmussen Reports.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home. Went to bed.
So is the president losing Republicans?
No. Look, this is still Donald Trump's Republican Party, and we can see it here. It's like a rock, to quote Bob Seger. I mean, take a look here. Republicans who approve of Trump. 6 months ago, it was 87%. Now, well, hello, it's the same number. It's 87%. He has not lost any support among Republicans compared to 6 months ago. As I said at the beginning, he's like a rock. He's like a rock. The Republican base is sticking by Donald Trump at this point in time.
It really is interesting to watch his overall approval rating go down, 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 but see this be completely constant here.
It is among independents. It's not among Republicans.
Okay, so how does this compare to past presidents in a second term?
Yeah, okay, I think this gives the game away, right? Which is Donald Trump, if you look at 21st century presidents' own party approval at this point in term two, who leads the pack? It's Donald John Trump. 87% of Republicans approve of Donald John Trump. You go back to 2013, 78% of Democrats supported Barack Obama, and it was 78% of Republicans who supported George W. Bush back in 2005 at this point. So Donald Trump has the biggest highest own party approval of any president who served their entire second term in the 21st century.
You could look at this one of two ways. You could say, obviously, he's doing way better than past presidents. Or you could say, there is still room to settle. If there is a reversion to the mean here, if that does fall further, that could chip into his overall approval rating. Okay, Margorie Taylor Green resigning from Congress in January. One of the concerns is that Donald Trump backed someone in a primary against her. How has Donald Trump done in his congressional endorsements?
You know, when you go up against Donald Trump, you're going up.
Oh, man. Welcome back to Turkey Tuesday, or the Tuesday before Thanksgiving 2025. And the Rob Maness Show is live on Worldview YouTube and our X Spaces simulcast. And my guest today is Mark Mitchell, honest pollster on X. And Mark, I love showing Harry's clips because he's energetic, even when he's briefing something he doesn't necessarily believe in or like. But I don't know what that number tells us. Does it say that there's a problem with the folks that are being polled in the Republican Party when you see the opposite of the potential effects of all these missteps, not missteps, but mismessaging of what's really going on from the administration and the president? What's really going on? Is there a MAGA civil war really happening?
Yes. This is tough to parse. So first off, I don't believe that 87% number, because in my number, and I trust my numbers, I think we were right last fall, his aggregate includes a lot of really garbage pollsters like Ipsos, Reuters, and stuff like that. I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure. My number's more like 81%, but also it's been about steady. Like Donald Trump hasn't really lost that much support among Republicans. But I think it's kind of a meaningless number because the reason that Donald Trump got like 75 plus million votes when most Republicans have gotten 60 to 63 million is because he built a big tent coalition that included a lot of independents and Democrats. So in my polling last fall, 42% of his support came from Democrats and independents. And so that's like full stop. Any discussion about beating Democrats has to acknowledge that now the Republican Party needs those people to turn out. And what we've seen over and over again is that when Donald Trump's on the ballot, the Republican Party, it can make a ton of excuses, but it does not get those people to turn out. Now, I understand that there are problems, that the Democrats have an asymmetrical advantage on fundraising, on get out the vote, on lying and breaking the rules, on media, on algorithmic stuff, on organizing, on all this stuff. The Democrats have an asymmetrical advantage. I'm sorry, but you have to beat that. And the Republicans don't have a plan to beat that. They have a high propensity voter base. It's like affluent, suburban people, liberals who are now ascribing to a new religion. Their new religion is their leftist worldview. Those people will vote. If the Republican Party has disaffected independents, the independents aren't going to turn out for the Republican Party. And so, unfortunately, it means the Republican Party needs to change in a very drastic manner. And I think it could, this was my message to Trump. I think leadership could really step in here and say, okay, well, what do we mean now? And what do we stand for? And what's the overarching theme behind our entire movement? And I said this a long time ago. I said that right now, MAGA is basically whatever the hell Trump says it is. And that is going to lose political capital at some point, and that J.D. Vance is going to have to fill the vacuum. I think he already started to do that. In many ways, J.D. has laid out a very much more intentional view of what an America First movement looks like without Donald Trump. But when there are fractures in the coalition, then you see people scream. And we're seeing that right now. And these are all groups jockeying for position. Somebody has to wrangle those people together with leadership. The loudest one we saw recently, again, was people freaking out because the Israel numbers are turning really bad. And you had basically two people talk on the internet. You had Tucker Carlson interview Nick Fuentes. It was very obvious, in my opinion, that they should have just ignored that. And I said it. I said stuff about the Streisand effect. And because of like 90% of the stuff Nick Fuentes says, he's just this 27-year-old guy on the internet. 90% of the stuff he says is smart and makes sense to most people, and he's very intelligent. And so what they did was like basically a 4-week exercise in trying to cancel him and Tucker Carlson that wound up making Nick Fuentes one of the biggest things on the internet. And in the meantime, they tried to get some of that mud to splatter on the head of the Heritage Foundation, which is becoming more conservative. They are more MAGA. They tried, in my opinion, to undermine J.D. Vance. They tried to undermine Trump. There was a lot of people, pushing Ron DeSantis now and stuff like that. And so I think that just like the Nick Fuentes and Groyper movement is unhappy with certain parts of the Trump movement and is being loud and vocal, you're going to see increasingly the corporate wing of the party, the Israel First wing of the party, the NATO pro-war wing of the party. They're going to get louder, and they're going to fight until that vacuum is filled with leadership. And I think Trump has an opportunity to fix that. And it's like, well, he hasn't really signaled, in my opinion, in a way that makes those problems go away. J.D. Vance tried to do it, and the Israel newspapers freaked out over him saying that the Trump administration wasn't controlled by Israel. So I guess what I'm going to say, what I'm saying is that these aren't changing Trump's numbers. But it's a Republican problem. Republican Party has to figure out how to deal with all these disparate voices. The best way to do it is to focus everybody on a very clear goal. Donald Trump has a role in that. And this is going to be the future of Republicanism, is this scrap fight over what the right way going forward is. It has to involve satisfying the problems of the youth. They can no longer afford to use young men as a doormat. And it can no longer afford granddaddy's conservatism. It can no longer afford the corporatism. It can no longer afford putting other countries first. And, until it gets that, the Democrats are going to win on democratic socialism.
Yeah, I mean, I call this brand of populism that Trump has been successful with Americanism, because it helps my brain focus on, yeah, it's populist, but it has aspects of classical liberalism from the founding values of America and freedom and prosperity. But the priority is given to Americans before anything else. And I mean Americans. Like I like what Trump is doing with the drug boats coming through the Gulf of America and coming up the Pacific coast, because those kill Americans, tens of thousands of them every single year. It's a direct attack on Americans, and I like the priority that's being put there. I have no issues with that. I have no issues with him reestablishing our dominance in the Western Hemisphere and pushing China and Russia and Iran and anybody else that wants to be the top dog around here out through the threat of force, and using our military to protect our own country before anything and anybody else. And I think even the 18 to 40s are probably okay with some of that. But where I don't agree is we don't need any more endless wars. No endless wars. But they don't want any endless wars either. None of the protracted crap that we've seen the last 35 years. And I agree with the 18 to 40s on that. And that's because I think through the lens of this Americanism idea, and the Republican Party has an opportunity there. But what I see their brains at is in the Bush years still. Yeah, I guess 100%. To simplify it.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going on. And all you need to do is explain to the American people how this fits into the overarching plan for America. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. They're going to be able to spot the lies now. And absolutely 100% the voters under 40 are totally okay with coloring outside the lines, because they've seen that the conservative movement has been used to create a very confining set of lines. And so when you clutch pearls about blowing up boats, they look over there at how you push NATO up to the doorstep of Russia. You know what I mean? And how we spent billions and billions of dollars over there. So it's like they're all for the blowing up the boats energy because they get that. And like we've seen this signal. Like I said, the Zoomers want more arrests than anybody else. They want the government picked apart more than anybody else. They were totally okay with Trump being a dictator. And they even were they were the most supportive age bracket of people who wanted Trump to ignore the judges. And what happens is the Republican Party is just totally handicapped itself by these ridiculous judges. And I watch some of these Zoomer weather vanes. If people want to dip their toe into this water, a really good one is this video game streamer called Asmon Gold. Some of his stuff is politics. And he came out and said, I watch him because he has no party loyalty. A lot of these people don't. They think the whole system has failed them. And so they're not voting from a red team, blue team perspective. And he said, you know what, I like a lot of what Trump stood for, but I didn't vote for him because I knew he wouldn't be the dictator I wanted him to be. And when you watch him react to the Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes interview, the parts he liked best were when Nick Fuentes said that the iron fist of the government needs to come down on these anti-ICE protesters, because how can you have an uprising? And so, again, they just want a brutal return to order, and they're totally fine with playing fast and loose with the rules.
George Washington would have put the fist of government and the U.S. military onto these ICE protesters, too, because it is an uprising. That's what it is. It may be in pockets, but it's national. And I agree with the president on that, too. He hasn't done anything illegal. Before we get to the end here, we got a couple minutes left, Mark. I do have to ask you this, though, on Mondami, the socialist, communist, he's a communist Islamist. The 18 to 40s, it seems to me the data that I'm hearing you explain might even have a window open where the 18 to 40s would vote for that guy for president of the United States.
Oh, yeah. This is the real problem. So under 40 Trump voters, 75% of them support nationalizing major industries to give control and equity to the people. 56% of them support excess wealth distribution. And depending on the poll, we've had the last time we asked it, they would support a Democratic Socialist by it was split like 43 to 43, I think. Like the point is, under 40 Trump voters are kind of okay with Democratic Socialism, and among all under 40 voters, Democratic Socialist candidate would win. It's plus 20 people would support those people. So now the weird thing is, well, yeah, but if you ask them which is a better system, capitalism or socialism, they say capitalism. They say capitalism is better than socialism. But again, they think the system has failed them. And so Mamdani's got a 62% favorable rating among under 40s, I think, right now. And Donald Trump used to have a 60%. And I think everybody in Washington, D.C. is still scratching their heads. Like, how could somebody support Trump and also Mamdani? Well, it's like they just want a plan to fix America for their interests. And they listen to Mamdani talk, and he says, we're going to help you with housing. We're going to help you afford things. We're going and you know, the socialism will take the money from the wealthy and the companies. So like that's a winning proposition. And the right needs a pragmatic response to that. It has to have something believable. And it's like, well, you know, you could do something other than hug billionaires on TV. Like that's
absolutely right. What I mean? That's it right there, man. We're out of time, Mark. Thank you so much for joining me. I got to get you back because we got to spend a whole show talking about election fraud. This thing with Emma Robinson and Lara Logan and my friend Gary Burnson and his team and everything is unbelievable, man. Thank you very much.
Yeah, great to be here.
We'll see you. Now, tomorrow is Whistleblower Wednesday. We're taking the day off, but we'll rerun a great show. And I'll see you next Monday on More War Monday. We're going to be hitting the Islamist thing in New York City again. I got a pastor coming on that went into the mosque just a few months ago, and it's an interesting darn story. I'll see you then on Worldview Tube.